Oh, Jason, I get so many questions on the SPA line from frustrated SPA managers in main part about normally the same sorts of things, to be honest. So there's a few of them I just really like to discuss with you today and see if we can get a senior management level view on the frustrations that we've got at grassroots level in the industry, really. So one of the main things, and it's something that I've struggled with as well when I've been a SPA manager, has been to get particularly my male general managers down into the SPA, never mind actually having a treatment, but just getting them down to visit the SPA. Do you go down and visit your SPA at Rockliffe Hall?
I think all GMs, all the managing directors should do every single day. I do a morning walk around of the whole property resort, 8:15 every morning, and that's my first port of call, because ultimately our SPA members come in there. We have an awful lot of SPA days, which I'm sure we'll come on to later. That has to be pristine, especially in the days of COVID, with sanitising, fogging, etc. Cleanliness is the paramount importance, and health and safety, of course. Mm-hmm. And I think with the revenue that the SPA brings in also, and the amount of staff I've got employed in the SPA, it's very much up there at the top of my list of important departments. That's
great to hear. Why do you think that's not the case for a lot of general managers? What do you think the resistance is to getting GMs down into the SPA?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the important thing for most hotels is that F&B and rooms revenue drives most of the profit. They see the SPA as a huge burden on the rest of the hotel, with costs of utilities, etc., staffing, payroll costs, and the cost to do a treatment. So I think that they're kind of lost with that, in the sense of it's not as important. I know it sounds awful thing to say, but in my eyes, it's as important, if not the most important, going forward. And I think your profits will show that if you look after it and maintain it and concentrate on the profit margins in there, and help the teams, especially SPA managers who are perhaps more holistic than financial, should I say.
Well, that leads me on actually to a really interesting point. So, yeah, I mean, there's a large section of the SPA industry that have worked their way through industry, myself included. I did an MVQ level 3 in beauty therapy, and don't have what you would call a high level academic pathway. I've never done a degree level or anything like that. And I think that's something that is mirrored across a lot of the SPA sector. So I think many of us have come through without having any training necessarily on business or revenue and those kind of commercial aspects of the businesses, if you like. So as an MD of a very large SPA focused property, what do you expect to see from your SPA team in relation to the commercials?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, I came here in January, inherited a 10-year-old business, and it's very clear across the board, SPA, just as bad as the rest of them, is that we don't forecast payroll, we don't forecast revenue in each department. We are now doing that, but because the managers in all the departments haven't done it before, we now need to coach and maintain and appraise all those managers going forward. Whether, if it's a restaurant manager, all they've been concentrating on is the operation, and that's their important thing. What they haven't done, and it's my expectation, I'm sure yours as well, that it's not about the guest journey, it's about managing people, doing the rotas, effective management, appraisals, training, job chats. That's all part of your daily role. And I think we've concentrated so much on the guest journey here, being a 5 star property, that we've forgotten about the commercials. And I think now it's going into the SPA, whereas we've got a membership manager, we've got a treatments manager, we've got the SPA manager, SPAx manager. They're all focused on the operation, quite rightly. Yeah. But what's not happened is the commercials. And I think that's not their fault. I think that's our fault as a company. We've not done that. So now we're going to start driving those managers, making sure they understand the commercials, the cost base, the payroll, the revenues coming in, and making sure they are focused on that, because they are very holistic. They are very fluffy, if I can use that word. They're all about the guest journey.
We're not fluffy, Jason.
But ultimately, they have to understand it's a business, and my SPA turns over £2.1 million, so it's not a small amount of money. So it's really, really important we drive the revenues, drive the profit margins, but also keep the guest journey to that 5 star standard.
Yeah, and obviously there are a lot of people in the industry who, as I said, maybe have come through via experience rather than having that kind of level of training and experience that, you know, someone's invested the time into them. What would your advice be to a SPA manager or SPA director who feels that maybe they don't have that right kind of expertise or experience in relation to the commercials? What should they or could they be doing in their business to try to gain that experience so they've got the ability to, you know, support with the budgeting process, make sure that they understand their P&L upside down, inside out, back to front? Because I do think, as an ex-SPA director, you do need to understand your numbers. If you're going to have any ability to be able to, you know, substantiate a case upwards in your business, you do need to be able to crunch the numbers to be able to do that. So what would your advice be to our SPA managers who may be in this situation?
From my point of view, I think the important thing is, over the years here, and I'll use this as a good example, that's the way it's been and that's the way they've always done it. So sadly, that's got to change. But ultimately, it's about the managers themselves stepping up and saying, look, I don't know this. And I'd rather them say that and say, I don't know. And we can coach them, we can train them, we can mentor them to make them better people. And I have a philosophy where I don't want staff here 20 years. I'd rather have them here 5 or 10 years maximum. And then say, right, I've learned everything I can learn here and move on to the next best thing. And that's really important to me. And I think when it comes to, you know, wanting something capital expenditure to be spent, in previous, somebody get given a sheet, say, can I buy this? Well, now they have to put a business case forward to say why they want it, how much it's going to cost, what the return on investment is going to be. And that's the first stage of learning about spending money and what return it's going to bring. And if it's not in the budget, that's fine. If it costs me £5,000, but it brings in £100,000 of revenue, of course I'm going to look at it. But there needs to be a business case behind that. And I think that's where we need to start. I've set up now a template for the team across the business to make sure if they want something that they think is going to bring a lot of revenue in, high profit margins, they put a business case together. And I think that's the important thing. It's stepping forward and saying, I can't do something. That's very hard for a lot of people. Everybody almost, you know, is very embarrassed to say they don't know something. I have no issue with that at all. I'd rather show them, mentor them, tell them how to do it so that it doesn't happen again. So
you would say just brave the fear and swallow your pride a little bit and maybe just go and ask for that investment in you.
Definitely. I have more respect for that person if they come forward and they don't know something and we can show them and tell them to make them a better person. That is a great thing.
That's fantastic. So do you plan to involve your senior SPA team then in the forward business with looking at the budgets and, you know, fully taking on board their input in kind of how that will be developed for the future years?
Yeah, so actually the first year now we've actually done the budget. We're a July to June year, but obviously with COVID, we've not even written the budget. We're in the process of finalising it now for this year because, you know, ultimately we're closed for kind of, you know, up until July, so it's pretty possible. But ultimately, we've now involved the financial controller, the SPA managers, the restaurant managers, and so on into all that budget process. They're the ones in the operation who see what's going on. So if they need 5 cleaners for doing something, they know why, because they're in the operation. They see it day in, day out. And I'm saying, well, no, you need 3 cleaners. They're going to tell me why I need 5 cleaners. That's the difference. And it's that complete understanding, even on my side as well. I don't know the ins and outs of every single detail of every single department. That's why I employ good people. So ultimately, they're going to tell me what they need to run their businesses. And they've been fully involved now in that complete process from start almost to finish. And it'll be their budget, their responsibility, and they take ownership of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That was a really interesting point you just made in relation to CapEx, because that's always been a challenge that I've definitely had in previous roles. You know, it can be difficult, I think, for the SPA to sometimes get the investment that they need. And I think it's always that kind of difficulty, isn't it, when any business is looking at the budget and putting the CapEx plan together for the following financial year. How can a SPA manager really kind of, you mentioned presenting a business case, but what would you in your role be expecting from that SPA manager or SPA director? What would they need to be bringing to the table in that business case to present, to say, you know, this is what we need and this is what we want from the CapEx plan, but what would you expect them to bring to you as part of that?
So first, let's just say it's a new hydrotherapy pool, let's say, for example. So we need to get maintenance involved. We need to get the financial controller involved, because that's quite a big project. And ultimately it would need to be the cost to rip it out, the cost to put it in, the cost to get it up and running, to get it commissioned, and then the extra revenue is going to generate going forward, and how much staff you need extra perhaps to run it than you did previously. It might be a bigger one or a smaller one. And it's a very simple document. I'm not asking them to write a new budget. It's a business case, very simple, not overcomplicated, because, I don't want to blind the managers with science all the time just to get, a £5,000 capex through. It's just, that's silly. All it is the cost, the extra payroll, the extra profit it's going to generate over a 12-month period in the budget. And it's very simple. That's all I want. Nothing more than that. It's very simple. It's a half an hour, 20-minute job.
Yeah. And would you expect the SPA manager to collect the quotes and bring you everything for that? Or when you say involve the maintenance team, would that be where you expect that, there'll be cross-departmental support to be able to deliver on that?
Yeah, I think, ultimately with any job you do, delegation is the art of good management. And what we need to do is make sure we bring in all those people and make sure maintenance get the quotes, finance check the figures, they pull it all together and present it.
That's perfect. And do you expect them to get, so many quotes, or are you happy for them to work with their preferred partner and go with that? Or what would that look like in your business?
No. So again, when it arrived, we had one quote because we knew them and they worked with us for many years, but then realised very quickly that when I put things out to tender to 3 suppliers, and every single thing we buy here now has to go out to tender, end of contract, 3 suppliers, it was very clear that relationships cost us money.
Okay.
I know it sounds awful, but ultimately I was paying £6,100 for something which I'll name nameless. We could get it from another supplier locally for £3,800.
Okay.
So
they do need to really be aware of the various options across industry as well. So I suppose that's where networking and attending events and understanding what is out there is important too, really, to get the SPA team out and interacting with the rest of the industry. Yeah,
and I think for you yourself that there are specific companies who across the country who will deal with certain things, like saunas or pools. We always go to the same ones. Every property I've been in, we probably use the same ones. But then you still have to go out to tender. Sometimes they are cheaper. Sometimes they can match the price. It's all just getting the cost base right. So that's the important thing. But as you know, relationships are key, whether it be networking, suppliers, and even if something breaks down in the SPA, you've got that relationship with them. They'll come out, whereas the new company who paid £2,000 less probably won't. So it's a swing and roundabout sort of thing.
Yeah, there's always a pro and con to everything like that when you make a shift, isn't there?
Yeah, and the cheapest is not always the most economical in the long run either. So it might be cheapest in the short term, but they may not have support. They may not be able to go and call out. So you have to weigh all those things up. And I learned a very, very strong lesson many years ago. One of my old previous owners, he would always buy the most expensive things. And I said to him in my naivety then when I was young, why do you keep spending all this money? And when you realise he bought the most expensive, it lasts 20 years. He bought the cheapest, he would replace it 3 or 4 times in that 20 years and it actually cost more.
Yeah.
So I've learned that lesson, very clear lesson. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I've learned that lesson a few times in the past as well. One of the other main challenges, and I'm sure you will have heard this before with your background working in many SPA properties, but I think we generally struggle as a SPA industry within a hospitality property to get a fair and commercial allocation for the SPA as part of a residential package. And we all know that hotels focus heavily on, everyone will be cringing when I say these, average room rate and hotel occupancy, because of course in most properties it's very much bedroom centric, isn't it? And then kind of seconded by a F&B. So what can a SPA manager do to support their case in trying to generate that kind of allocation, and get that from the GM? How can they use TrevPAR and other aspects? What do you want as a obviously you're managing director at your property, but what can they deliver to try to get that, argue that case and get that allocation that they feel that the SPA deserves to be commercial and profitable?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance, I have to say, because clearly, as you quite rightly mentioned, we always focus on RevPAR, TrevPAR, average room rate, occupancy. But in the same sense, having a SPA drives our occupancy. And ultimately, if we didn't have it, I'm sure we would be in a very different place. So we have to make sure that they get the allocation they need and drive the revenues. For example, spa day revenues, they get £20 for lunch. And that's the menu cost. Because it's 2-course light lunch, they get £20. That's the full allocation. They don't get any allocation for somebody staying in a hotel. But what you have to remember is they then go to the spa, they use facilities, and my spa manager will say, well, the spa's already open, there's no cost to it, so it's not a problem. But she still want her allocation. So I can't give that up for average room rate because that's pure profit, whereas the cost base in the spa is very much higher because of the utility costs and the running costs of the spa. So that stays in our profit lines in bedrooms, and they get allocations elsewhere. So the spa, they get a bigger allocation, they get an F&B allocation, they get obviously got membership as well. So we put a bit of membership revenue through there and allocations in that way. So we've got about 900 members in the spa. So obviously they pay a fee per month.
Yeah.
With COVID, that's slightly gone down, but ultimately their revenue is 100% profit through membership. So that's why we don't give them allocation through bedrooms. But quite rightly, the spa manager should be banging on my door every day saying, I want.
I'd be driving you round the twist.
And sometimes she does, but ultimately that's her job. And if she wasn't doing that, that'd be right. But ultimately, in my eyes, I have to say that's not going to change, because I know the cost basis in the spa, they've got 900 members paying quite a lot of money per month, and that is pure profit. So I think in my eyes, compared to bedrooms, they have enough allocation. Sorry.
But out of a residential, so for a spa break, for example, I'm going to push you on this one. I was going to hate you by the end of this. For a spa break, for example, we'll just use, if it's £159 per person for the spa break, and that's inclusive of dinner, bed and breakfast, and a 30-minute treatment in the spa, for example. Is there a way, obviously the spa would never get its full allocation. If an express treatment would be £45 normally, they'll be getting nowhere near that as an allocation wrapped into a residential package.
Correct.
How could a spa justify the cost and profitability to be able to push that if they are in a property where they feel it's really not correct, or they're joining a new property where it's really off and it's really affecting their profitability and their ability to keep their costs and payroll and things in line? What would be your main piece of advice for them in that circumstance?
I think from a point of view, I'd have to look at everything across the board. It wouldn't have to be spa allocations. That's the thing. And the trick here is we've got to be fair to all the departments, because every manager will be banging on my door, making sure they get their own bit, because they're responsible for their own budget. Yeah. So it's important they get their own allocation. We'd have to work out together what we believe is the right way forward. And clearly, having a £45 treatment, they're not going to get £45 as part of that package. They're not. So they'll probably get cost plus VAT, I would have thought. Okay. So we're talking about 20 quid, I would have thought, out of that £45, which some spas don't even get that. Mm-hmm. So, green fees, we charge £60 for a green fee and they get £25. So it's got to be comparable across the business. But yeah, as you quite rightly say, they need to drive that kind of push on the allocation to get their profitability. But they've got, in my eyes, they've got that through membership. They've got through that through, they have got good allocation through residential spa packages and spa days. So I think that's as much as you're going to get.
Thank you. I have to push that because it's been my biggest bugbear for my whole career. You get somewhere and the allocation's just terrible, and it takes it takes a lot of persuasion and figures to usually get that. And I think
in defence of my spa manager now, she is fighting her corner absolutely, because what you have to remember is now where we are with the spa, we're 80% down on revenue because of the restrictions. Yeah. But also we froze membership because of allocation of people in the spa. We couldn't take many people, so we froze membership. We've frozen spa days. Last year we took 13,052 spa days, so huge amounts of revenue there. But we're only taking hotel residents because they're filling the hotel. Yeah. Now what you have to remember, at the moment, she's not getting anything for that.
Yeah.
So revenues are down, costs are up, payroll's up, but we know that there is a reason for it. So we're building that into the budget for next year, and obviously these restrictions continue, then we'll have to grin and bear it. Some companies can do that, some can't. Yeah. So we just have to go with the flow for the moment and see what happens and what changes.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. I do think, this is probably why this is a really important conversation for us to have today, really, because I do think there's going to be an enormous focus on trying to work through the new norm, as we seem to have termed it, and looking at how we can evolve our businesses now as we're, moving through these changes. And while we've got the restrictions that we've got in place and we are being challenged with occupancy and various other things, we are going to see a shift in the revenue and how we forward budget in our businesses. So I think it's really important that SPA managers feel empowered and that they have the knowledge to be able to manage upwards in that situation and really kind of fight for what they think is right for their business and to have their voice heard at a more senior level within the business. So thank you, Jason. That's been absolutely perfect. I think it's been a really helpful conversation. It definitely answers a lot of the questions that I get on the SPA line. And if anybody does want that sort of support one-to-one, you can join the UK SPA Association. So do visit our website. It's www.spa-uk.org. And now we'll hand back to the SPA Live team for Q&A from the audience.